A misdirected message changed everything between her and the CEO. "What a handsome man," she wrote by mistake. And now he wouldn't stop teasing her every day. Where are you watching this story from? Subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what happens between them will surprise you. Adana's heart almost stopped when she realized what she had done. There, on the brightly lit screen of her phone, shone the most terrifying confirmation she could imagine. The message, "What a handsome man," had been sent to Chief Emeka Obi, the CEO of the company, and not to her best friend, as she had intended. Her hands trembled as she held the device. The office air conditioning suddenly seemed insufficient to cool the heat rising to her face. It was 7 a.m. in Lagos. She had arrived early, as always. And in that moment of carelessness, as she took the first sip of her still steaming latte, she commented on the photo he had posted on the company's social media page. It was an image of him visiting the new branch in Calabar, his graying hair slightly tousled by the Atlantic breeze. Adana was known in the finance department for three qualities that defined her completely. Her ability to find errors everyone else ignored, even in the most complex reports, her almost obsessive punctuality that made her arrive an hour before everyone else, and the careful silence she maintained about her personal life. At 42, she had built a solid reputation based on competence and discretion. Her colleagues respected her, though few truly knew her beyond the numbers she masterfully manipulated. The perfectionism she displayed in financial statements hid a deep terror of being seen as vulnerable, of allowing anyone to discover that behind the professional facade existed a woman who secretly observed every detail of the man who commanded that corporate empire. Adana's eyes scanned the message again. There was no way to undo it, no way to turn back time. The initial panic gave way to something worse. Absolute shame. She imagined the laughter, the comments among the executives, the loss of credibility she had worked so hard to build. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, typing and deleting possible explanations. "Sorry, it was a mistake. Too obvious. My niece must have taken my phone. Ridiculous. Mass message error. Even worse." The reply arrived 15 minutes later, while she was still debating whether to pretend her phone had been stolen or simply resign by email. "Thanks for the compliment. My office, 8:30 a.m. The message was short, formal, but there was something in those words that made her stomach churn. She knew that tone. It was the same one he used before important negotiations, that controlled calm that preceded strategic moves. Adana looked at herself in the window's reflection. Her impeccable gray corporate suit, her brown hair pulled back in a perfect bun, her discreet pearl earrings. Everything about her appearance screamed professionalism and control, but inside, she was a whirlwind of contradictory emotions. For 2 years, she had admired Chief Emeka Obi from the safe distance of her workstation, observing how he led meetings with a confidence that seemed innate, how his deep voice resonated in conference rooms, how his decisions transformed impossible projects into profitable realities. The clock struck 8:15 a.m., 15 minutes to prepare for the most devastating humiliation of her professional life. Adana closed her eyes and took a deep breath. If she was going to face this, she would do it with the same dignity with which she handled every financial crisis that landed on her desk. Chief Emeka's office occupied the entire top floor of the corporate building on Victoria Island, with windows offering a panoramic view of the Lagos skyline, with the city waking up under the March sky. Adana had never been there before. Her interactions had always been mediated by managers and conference room meetings. When she knocked on the door, a firm voice replied, "Come in." He stood by the window, holding a white porcelain cup. He turned slowly, and for the first time, Adana noticed his eyes were a warm brown, almost golden under the natural light. Chief Emeka was 53, and every line on his face told stories of difficult decisions and arduous achievements. His presence filled the room in a way that had nothing to do with physical space, and everything to do with the energy he exuded. "Please, have a seat," he said, gesturing to a leather armchair by his desk. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with a subtle woody cologne. Adana obeyed, her legs trembling slightly, awaiting the humiliation that was surely to come. She mentally prepared her apologies, her explanation about the privacy of personal thoughts, about how this would not affect her professionalism. But what he said next completely changed the course of that morning. "I need someone I can trust for a special project." Chief Emeka sat before her, his fingers intertwined on the desk. "We are planning to expand to 3 new cities in the next 8 months. Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Kaduna. You would be responsible for all the financial structuring." Adana blinked, confused. Had she heard correctly? It was an opportunity any professional would kill for. Me? She managed to articulate, her voice sounding sharper than usual. Chief Obi. Chief Emeka interrupted her. If we're going to work so closely together, Chief is unnecessary. There was something in his smile, almost imperceptible, just a slight curve at the corners of his lips, that suggested he hadn't forgotten the message. And yes, I've reviewed your work over the last 2 years. No one in this company has your eye for detail, your ability to foresee problems before they happen. But the message, Adana felt she had to address the elephant in the room, though each word made her feel more exposed. The message? Chief Emeka leaned back in his chair, his eyes gleaming with something she couldn't quite decipher. It was refreshing. In a world where everyone tells me exactly what they think I want to hear, it was sincere, though perhaps misdirected. A deliberate pause. Or perhaps not. Adana's cheeks burned. It was a terrible mistake. I would never, Adana. His voice grew more serious, though it didn't lose that touch of warmth. The message was an accident, but this offer is not. I've been considering you for this project for weeks. You just gave me the perfect excuse to call you in today. He stood up, walking to the window, his hands in his pockets. This project can transform the company, but I need someone brilliant, dedicated, and above all, courageous. Someone who isn't afraid to tell the truth, even if accidentally. Adana felt something stir in her chest, a mixture of relief, excitement, and renewed terror. It's a big responsibility. It is, Chief Emeka admitted, turning to her, and it will be demanding. We'll travel together, work long hours, face resistance from people who don't want change. His gaze intensified. But if you accept, I promise it will be the most transformative experience of your career. And, Adana, he waited until she met his gaze. Mistakes are only unforgivable if we don't learn from them. Yours showed me that beneath that professional perfection is a real person, and that's exactly what I need on my team. When Adana left that office 30 minutes later, with a preliminary contract in hand and a schedule of meetings beginning the following Monday, she realized the ground beneath her feet had completely shifted. She was no longer the invisible analyst at her workstation. Now, she was the person who would work directly with the man she had admired from a distance. And that was as thrilling as it was terrifying. The following days revealed a side of Chief Emeka Obi that Adana had never imagined. She discovered he had a wicked and sophisticated sense of humor, an ability to find the exact point where teasing brushed against discomfort without crossing obvious professional lines. He was a master of subtle irony. The first time was on Monday morning. Adana arrived at 7:00 a.m., as was her custom, with a folder full of preliminary analyses on the markets of Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Kaduna. She had worked all weekend researching economic trends, operational costs, and local competitors. When she entered the designated meeting room for her project, Chief Emeka was already there, reviewing documents on his tablet. "Good to see you," he said, looking up with a serious expression. "I've been looking forward to this." The tone was completely neutral, professional, but Adana caught the amused glint in his eyes. She felt a blush creeping up her neck as she opened her laptop, trying to maintain her composure. "I've brought the preliminary analyses," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervousness she felt. She placed the reports on the table with precise movements, each one perfectly organized with colorful dividers. Chief Emeka flipped through them, nodding with genuine approval. "Excellent work, but I also need you to analyze this aspect." He slid his tablet towards her, showing a photograph of a potential location in Abuja. It was a modern commercial building near Millennium Park. "What do you think? Is it handsome enough for your criteria?" Adana almost dropped her pen. He had used the same word, handsome, and both knew exactly what he was referring to. She took a deep breath, deciding that if he was going to play this game, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. "The location is strategic," she replied in a controlled voice. "The aesthetics of the building are secondary to traffic flows and accessibility for corporate clients." She held his gaze, refusing to look away. "Though I must admit, Abuja's contemporary architecture has its own particular charm." Chief Emeka's smile widened slightly. "Touché." Thus began a strange dynamic between them. Every morning, when Adana arrived with her reports, he found subtle ways to provoke her. "I need your opinion on this photo for the annual report. Do you think it projects the right image? Or, I've noticed you always arrive early. Is it out of dedication to work or other motivations?" The words were always professional on the surface, but the subtext was crystal clear. Adana tried to stand her ground, responding with the same impeccable professionalism that had always characterized her. But inside, Each comment made her feel like she was walking a tightrope. Part of her was furious at how easily he destabilized her. Another part, smaller and more honest, found those provocations strangely stimulating. No one had ever challenged her like this. No one had seen beyond her perfect facade to find the woman underneath. The real problem arose in the third week, when she discovered something alarming in the preliminary numbers. One of the main investors, a financial group based in Enugu, had begun to withdraw its commitment. Not officially yet, but the signs were there. Postponed meetings, vague emails, evasive responses. If this investor completely withdrew, it would leave a $5 million hole in the budget. The entire project could collapse before it even began. Adana spent days checking and rechecking the numbers, searching for alternatives. She worked 70 hours that week, rebuilding the entire financial structure, exploring alternative capital sources. Nights grew long, coffee became her best friend, and the dark circles under her eyes deepened despite careful makeup. It was on one of those nights, past 11 p.m., when Chief Emeka appeared in her temporary office. Adana was surrounded by papers, charts projected on the walls, 3 computer screens showing different spreadsheets. She didn't hear him enter until his voice broke the silence. "You need to go home." She looked up, startled. He was standing in the doorway, his tie loosened and shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. For the first time, he looked as tired as she felt. "Just 1 more hour," Adana replied, her fingers already returning to the keyboard. "I'm almost at the solution." Chief Emeka didn't argue. Instead, he did something unexpected. He walked in, pulled up a chair, and sat beside her. "Show me what you're doing." And there, in the silence of the Lagos night, with only the light of the screens illuminating their faces, something shifted between them. The teasing ceased. The defenses fell. He wasn't just the untouchable CEO who liked to annoy her. He was someone who understood the language of numbers as well as she did, who saw the beauty in solving a complex problem. They worked together for 3 hours, their minds synchronizing in a way Adana had never experienced with anyone. When they finally found a viable solution, it was 2:00 a.m. Chief Emeka leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. "You are extraordinary," he said. And this time, there was no provocation in his voice, only genuine admiration. "This," he pointed to the screens full of creative solutions. "This is brilliant." Adana felt something loosen in her chest. She had spent years working in the shadows, being the person who fixed problems without recognition. Hearing those words from someone who truly understood what she had achieved meant more than she could have imagined. "Thank you," she replied simply, because she didn't trust her voice to say more. Chief Emeka looked at her for a long moment, and in his eyes, there was something she couldn't quite decipher. "Let's go," he said finally, standing up. "I'll take you home. Tomorrow, we start implementing this." As they drove through the empty streets of Lagos, with the streetlights creating golden patterns on the asphalt wet from the night's drizzle, Adana realized she had crossed an invisible threshold. She was no longer just another employee. Now she was his partner in this project, and that changed absolutely everything. The financial solution Adana had constructed that endless night required a sacrifice she hadn't entirely anticipated. To save the expansion project, she would need to dedicate herself exclusively to it, foregoing the promotion she had been expecting for 2 years in her original department. The position of Deputy Finance Director, with her own team and a significant salary increase, had been practically promised. But now she would have to tell her boss, Mr. Tunde Bello, that she couldn't accept it. The conversation was painful. Mr. Tunde, a 60-year-old man who had mentored her since she joined the company, looked at her with a disappointment that cut deeper than any criticism. "Are you sure about this, Adana?" he asked, his hands clasped on the table. "This opportunity might not come again, and frankly, there are rumors." "Rumors?" Adana felt her stomach clench. Mr. Tunde sighed, uncomfortable, "About why Chief Obi chose you for this project. Some think it has nothing to do with your capabilities." He paused meaningfully. "That message you supposedly sent. So, it was already known." Adana felt the heat of shame mixing with anger. "My capabilities are what saved this project when the main investor withdrew," she said in a firm voice, though her hands trembled. "I worked 120 hours in 2 weeks to find solutions no one else had considered." "I know, Mr. Tunde raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. "I believe in you, Adana. Always have. I'm just warning you about what's being said in the corridors." When she left that office, Adana felt the weight of the decision she had made. It wasn't just about a postponed promotion. It was about how she would be perceived from now on. Every success would be questioned, Every recognition would be seen through the prism of those rumors. Colleagues she had lunched with for years began to distance themselves. Conversations stopped abruptly when she entered the staff kitchen. Significant glances were exchanged when Chief Emeka and she passed by together in the hallways. Amaka, who had been her closest friend at the office, was brutally honest during a coffee break after work. "I'm not saying I believe it," Amaka began, stirring her coffee without looking her in the eye. "But you have to understand how it looks. An intimate message, and suddenly you're working exclusively with him, traveling together, private meetings at all hours." "It wasn't an intimate message," Adana interrupted her, her voice harsher than she intended. "It was a stupid mistake, and the meetings are work. Amaka, just work." "Seriously?" Amaka finally looked up. "Because I've seen you looking at him for 2 years, Adana. I'm not blind. And now he looks at you the same way." The words hit like a punch because they contained a truth Adana didn't want to examine too closely. Did Chief Emeka look at her a certain way, or was it just her imagination, fueled by that initial message and the forced intimacy of working so closely? The project continued to advance. The first Calabar was a coastal city in Cross River State, where the salty air clung to the skin and the sound of waves permeated every conversation. Where people lived at a slower pace, stopping for chats in squares filled with flamboyant trees. The hotel where they stayed was modern, with a sea view. Adana had her own room, of course, everything completely professional. But there was something about being away from Lagos, away from the critical eyes of the office, that changed the dynamic between them. Chief Emeka's teasing returned, but with a different tone, softer, almost affectionate. During a business dinner with local investors at a beachfront restaurant, where they served freshly caught grilled tilapia and spicy seafood stew, Chief Emeka recounted the story of the message with disconcerting naturalness. "My brilliant finance analyst declared her admiration for me very directly," he said, his eyes twinkling as the investors chuckled politely. "I decided that anyone with that level of honesty deserved an opportunity." Adana wanted to sink into her chair. Her cheeks burned as she drank water, trying to maintain a neutral expression. But when the meeting ended and they walked back to the hotel along the beach, with the lights of the boats blinking in the distance, she finally exploded. "Why do you do that?" she demanded, stopping under a streetlight. The sea breeze moved her loose hair. "Why do you have to mention that damn message at every opportunity?" Chief Emeka turned to her, his hands in his pockets, his expression more serious than she expected. "Because I want to see how long it takes for you to defend yourself," he replied simply. "To stop feeling ashamed of something that wasn't shameful. You had a human thought about another person. When did we become so cold that this became a reason for humiliation?" Adana stared at him, disconcerted. "But the rumors would exist anyway," he interrupted. "If you were a man, they would say, 'I'm grooming you for an executive position.' Since you're a woman, they assume there's something more. That says more about them than about us." He took a step forward. "And honestly, Adana, I don't care much about what they think. I care if you're letting their opinions define you." There was truth in his words that hurt, because it touched something deep. Adana had spent her entire life meticulously caring about how she was perceived, building a facade of impenetrable perfection. And in un accidental message, all of that had crumbled. "It's not that easy for me," she admitted in a low voice. "I wasn't born with your confidence." "Confidence isn't something you're born with," Chief Emeka replied, his voice softer now. "It's something you build decision after decision. And you've made courageous decisions, Adana. You sacrificed a promotion for this project. You worked yourself to exhaustion to save it. You faced criticism and rumors without giving up." A pause. "That takes more courage than most people have." That night, as she lay in her hotel bed listening to the sound of the sea, Adana thought about his words. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps it was time to stop apologizing for existing, for feeling, for being human. The message had been a mistake, yes, but everything that came after, everything she had achieved, that was not a mistake. That was her true worth. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let the world see it. May arrived in Calabar with a heat that heralded the dry season, and with it, the inauguration of the first branch. The final preparations were chaotic, as always happens when theory and practice collide, but Adana had learned to anticipate problems, to have plans, B, C, and even D. On the morning of the inauguration, as she checked every detail one last time, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: genuine pride. The ceremony was a resounding success. Local authorities, media, potential clients, all gathered in the new space that smelled of fresh paint and possibilities. Chief Emeka gave a speech that combined business vision with community commitment, and when he mentioned the extraordinary team that made it possible, he sought Adana's gaze in the crowd. She felt something expanding in her chest, but the euphoria was short-lived. Back in Lagos, Adana began to notice irregularities in the financial reports for the Abuja project. Numbers that didn't add up, documents that disappeared, delayed authorizations without clear explanation. At first, she thought they were normal administrative errors, but when the third coincidence occurred in 2 weeks, her analytical instinct ignited. She worked discreetly, tracking every transaction, every approval, every delay. What she discovered chilled her. Mr. Delekuti, the company's finance director and her former mentor, was sabotaging the project. Not in an obvious way, but with surgical subtlety. Budgets lost in computer systems, approvals delayed due to obscure requirements, investors receiving incomplete information that made them doubt. Mr. Dele had been the person who hired her 5 years ago, who had guided her when she was new to the company, who had praised her work and recommended her for promotions. Now he was trying to destroy the project that could define her career. Adana spent 3 sleepless nights, verifying every piece of evidence. She had to be absolutely certain, because what she was about to do was irreversible. When she finally had an irrefutable case, she faced the most difficult decision of her professional life: expose him or try to resolve it discreetly. The meeting with Chief Emeka was in his office on a Friday afternoon, when most employees had already left. Adana placed the folder with evidence on his desk, her hands trembling slightly. "You need to see this," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. Chief Emeka read in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. When he finished, he slowly closed the folder. "How long have you known about this?" "A week investigating to confirm, but suspicion started 3 weeks ago." "Why did you wait?" Adana took a deep breath. "Because I wanted to be sure. Because Mr. Dele was my mentor. Because exposing him would mean..." Her voice broke slightly. "It would mean admitting that someone I trusted is willing to destroy my work." Chief Emeka stood up, walked to the window. Lagos stretched out under the rosy evening sky. "Do you know why he's doing this?" he asked without turning. "Power," Adana replied. "The expansion project will change the company's structure. Mr. Dele sees it as a threat to his position." She paused. "And it probably also has to do with me. I'm his former protege, now working directly with you, without going through him. It's a loss of control. What do you want me to do?" Chief Emeka turned, and in his eyes, there was a deeper question. "How far are you willing to go?" Adana thought of all the times Mr. Dele had helped her, the advice he had given her, the trust they had built. But she also thought of the hundreds of people who would work in the new branches, the clients who would benefit, the project that represented not only her career but a vision of what the company could be. "I want you to confront him," she said in a firm voice. "I want him to see exactly what he did and understand that there are consequences." The confrontation happened the following Monday, at an executive management meeting. Chief Emeka presented the evidence with the precision of a surgeon. Mr. Dele tried to defend himself, claiming misunderstandings and system errors. But the numbers didn't lie, and Adana had built a case so solid that it left no room for doubt. Mr. Dele was removed from his position, but not before looking at Adana with a mixture of betrayal and contempt she would never forget. "This is what you get for trusting her," he said to Chief Emeka as he left the room. "A woman who will sell anyone out for a little attention from the boss." The words were like a knife. Adana felt all eyes in the room turn to her. The silence was thick, uncomfortable. Chief Emeka stood up, his voice cold as ice. "Get out of here now, Dele, and consider your severance package more generous than you deserve." But the damage was done. In the following weeks, the rumors that already existed intensified. Now she wasn't just the woman who had sent an inappropriate message, she was the woman who had destroyed the career of a veteran executive to protect her privileged position beside the CEO. Some saw her as a hero who had exposed corruption. Others saw her as an opportunistic traitor. Adana found anonymous notes on her desk. "Ambitious," one read. "Was it worth it?" another asked. Lunches in the staff cafeteria became solitary. Colleagues who once greeted her with smiles now merely nodded. The isolation was almost physical, as if she carried an invisible mark warning others to keep their distance. It was during one of those particularly difficult afternoons, when she found her 5th anonymous note of the day, that Adana finally broke. She locked herself in the restroom, letting the tears she had held back for weeks finally flow. She didn't cry for Mr. Dele, who had made his own decisions. She cried for the loneliness, for the price of success, for the impossibility of winning, No matter what she did, the restroom door opened. Amaka walked in, the same friend who had distanced herself. For a moment they just looked at each other. Then Amaka sighed, approaching. "I'm so sorry," she said simply. "I'm so sorry I doubted you." Adana wiped her tears. "Why now?" "Because I saw the documents. Chief Emeka shared them with some senior executives for transparency. What you did? What you uncovered? It was incredible and courageous." Amaka offered a tissue, and I realized I was a coward, letting rumors dictate my opinion of someone I've known for years. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. And as Adana washed her face, looking at herself in the mirror, she saw something different in her eyes. She was no longer trying to be invisible. She was no longer apologizing for taking up space. She was standing, even if the ground beneath her feet was unstable. That had to mean something. June brought with it not only the cool Harmattan haze of the Lagos dry season, but also a proposal Adana had never anticipated. She was reviewing financial projections for the Abuja branch when her phone rang, an unknown number from Enugu. It was Alhaji Musa Yakubu, Human Resources Director at Zenith Capital, one of Nigeria's most prestigious financial conglomerates. "Miss Adana," he began in a professional and courteous voice, "your name has been circulating in very interesting circles lately. Your work on Obi Holdings' expansion project has not gone unnoticed." He made a strategic pause. "We would like to offer you the position of Finance Director of our Regional Expansion Division." Adana almost dropped the phone. It was the kind of offer financial analysts dreamed of. Complete autonomy, a salary 3 times, her current one, her own team, the opportunity to lead instead of execute. "I'd need more details," she managed to reply, her mind racing. "Of course, would you be available for a meeting in Enugu next Wednesday?" Adana accepted without much thought. Only when she hung up did she realize the magnitude of what had just happened. This was her way out, an opportunity to escape the rumors, to start anew in an environment where no one would know the story of the message, where her competence would speak for itself, without the noise of speculation. She didn't tell Chief Emeka immediately. She needed time to process, to understand what she truly wanted. On Wednesday, she flew to Enugu, watching the Lagos landscape gradually transform into the hills and vibrant urban sprawl of eastern Nigeria. The meeting was in an impressive office in Ikoyi, with a view of the Eco-Atlantic city skyline. The offer was even better than she had imagined. Not just the salary and title, but the opportunity to build something from scratch, to implement her ideas, without having to navigate complex corporate politics. She would be respected for her work, not judged by an accidental mistake months ago. "You'll make the toughest decision of your life," Alhaji Musa told her as he walked her out. "But I can see in your eyes that you already know what you want to do. You just need the courage to admit it." On the flight back to Lagos, Adana looked out the window without really seeing the scenery. What did she want? Security, respect, peace. All of that was in Enugu, but there was something else, something she couldn't easily name, that kept her tethered to Lagos. Was it the project, or was it the man who led it? Chief Emeka knew about the offer before she told him. He always seemed to know everything. He was the one who sought her out, appearing in her temporary office at the end of the day. "When were you going to tell me?" he asked bluntly, closing the door behind him. "How did you know?" "Alhaji Musa and I were colleagues at business school. He called me for a reference check." Chief Emeka sat before her, his expression unreadable. "It's an excellent offer." "It is," Adana admitted, not knowing what else to say. "Are you going to accept?" "I don't know." It was the truth. It would be easier. A new beginning without complications. Complications? Chief Emeka smiled humorlessly. "Is that your word for this?" He gestured to the space between them. "For whatever is happening here?" Adana felt her heart race. "I don't know what's happening here, Chief Emeka. And that's exactly the problem. I don't know if I'm imagining things because I want them to exist, or if there really is something beyond work." Chief Emeka stood up, walked to the window. Lagos began to light up for the night, the lights creating urban constellations. "I'll tell you what's happening," he said without turning. "Since that first night, when we worked together until 2 in the morning, I've been trying to convince myself that I only admire your professional brilliance, that the teasing was just my way of maintaining appropriate distance." He turned, and in his eyes, there was a vulnerability she had never seen, but we both know that's a lie. The air in the room seemed to grow denser. Adana slowly stood up. "So, what is it? What is this?" "It's complicated," Chief Emeka admitted. "You are my employee, though technically assigned to a special project. There are rules, protocols, and the rumors would only get worse." He took a step towards her. But it's also this. Since you walked into my office that morning, ashamed of an honest message, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Not just your brilliance, though that is considerable, but your courage, how you face every obstacle, how you refuse to be defined by the opinions of others. Adana felt tears prickling in her eyes. And yet you're telling me to accept the offer from Enugu. No, he gently corrected. I'm telling you to make the right decision for you. If that means going to Enugu and building the career you deserve, free of rumors and complications, then I will support that decision. But if you decide to stay, he paused. If you decide to stay, I want it to be because you want to be here, not out of obligation, not for the project, but because I want to see where this takes us. And the rules? Adana asked, her voice just a whisper. The rules can change. Protocols can be updated. I've already spoken with Human Resources about formally transferring you to an independent subsidiary for the project, eliminating the direct reporting line. Chief Emeka smiled slightly. It turns out that when a CEO really wants something, he can move corporate mountains. Adana laughed through her tears. You had it all planned already? I had hope, he admitted, but I needed you to make your own decision first. That night, Adana walked along Victoria Island alone, listening to the murmur of people and the sound of street musicians. Lagos had challenged her in ways she never imagined. It had stripped away her comfort, her anonymity, her certainty, but it had also given her something more valuable, the opportunity to discover who she was beyond her fears. Enugu represented security. Lagos represented risk, but there was something Alhaji Musa Yakubu had said. You already know what you want to do. You just need the courage to admit it, and he was right. Adana called Alhaji Musa on Friday morning. Her decision was met with surprise, but professional respect. It's a shame to lose someone of your caliber, he said. But I understand, sometimes the best decisions aren't the most logical. There was nothing logical about her choice. Staying meant facing continuous rumors, navigating a complicated relationship with her boss, risking her reputation. But it also meant finishing what she had started, seeing the 3 branches completed, working alongside someone who challenged her to be better every day. And it meant exploring what was between her and Chief Emeka, whatever it was. The news that she had rejected the Enugu offer spread quickly through the office. Reactions were mixed. Some saw it as confirmation of their suspicions about her relationship with Chief Emeka. Others, like Amaka, understood it as a commitment to the project. And a few, those who truly knew her, saw it for what it was, courage. Chief Emeka said nothing when they met at the next project meeting. But when their gazes crossed across the conference table, laden with blueprints for the future, Abuja branch, Adana saw relief and something deeper in his eyes, something that looked dangerously like hope. The work in Abuja intensified. Unlike Calabar, where everything had flowed relatively smoothly, Abuja presented unique challenges. The chosen location was in a historical building that required special preservation permits. Costs were soaring over the original budget, and there was local resistance from small business owners who feared a large company would displace their businesses. Adana and Chief Emeka traveled to Abuja together in July, when the dry season cold was biting. They stayed in a boutique hotel in the Wus district, where the tree-lined streets offered charm and the aroma of hot akara floated from every street vendor. This time, there was less pretense between them. Adana's decision to stay had changed something fundamental. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult meeting with local business owners that had stretched for hours, Chief Emeka suggested walking through Millennium Park, Abuja. It was almost 8:00 p.m., but the cold persisted. The gardens of the cultural complex glowed under the night lighting, their classical forms reflecting Abuja's history. Do you know why I like this place? Chief Emeka asked as they walked. Because it defies expectations. When they restored these historical buildings and transformed them into cultural centers, everyone said it was too risky, too different, that it would never work. Now, they are the symbol of Abuja. Adana understood the metaphor. Are you comparing our project to architectural restoration? I'm comparing you to architectural restoration, he corrected with a smile. You came to this company and were what was expected. Discreet, efficient, invisible. And then, an accidental message revealed you were much more than that. Human, vulnerable, audacious. And now you're building something that will fundamentally change this company. They stopped in front of a prominent historical building, the neoclassical structure illuminated like a jewel. And you? Adana asked softly. What did that message reveal about you? Chief Emeka thought for a moment that I had forgotten how to connect with real people. I spent so much time building this company that I became as structured as an organizational chart. Everything had its place, its function, its purpose. He looked at her directly. And then you arrived with your careful perfection and your accidental secret and reminded me that the best things rarely follow the plan. There was something in the way he looked at her, in the golden light reflecting in his eyes, that made Adana feel they were on the verge of something irreversible. Chief Emeka, she began, not knowing exactly what she wanted to say. He took a step closer. Do you know when I truly decided that this, he gestured to the space between them, was worth any complication? When? That night in Calabar, when I explained about the rumors and you said it wasn't so easy for you. His voice grew softer, because I saw that you weren't asking for permission to feel. You were admitting you were afraid. And that's the bravest thing anyone can do. Adana felt tears threatening again. It seemed that lately she cried more than in her entire adult life combined. But these weren't tears of shame or frustration. They were tears of recognition, of being fully seen for the first time. I'm afraid now, she admitted, of what this means, of how it will change things. Everything changes things, Chief Emeka replied. Every decision, every risk, but we can choose which changes are worth making. He extended his hand. Is this one worth it? Adana looked at his outstretched hand, then at his face. She thought of all the reasons to say no. The corporate policies, the rumors, the difference in positions, the inevitable complications. But she also thought of those late nights working, the teasing that hid affection, the shared glances that said more than words. She took his hand. It's worth it. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But as they walked back to the hotel with their hands intertwined, both knew they had crossed a point of no return. What came next would be complicated, challenging, probably chaotic. But it would also be real, honest, and completely theirs, and that had to be enough. August was brutal, in ways Adana never anticipated. The Abuja branch faced a significant delay when inspectors discovered structural problems in the historical building, requiring extensive repairs. Costs soared, the timeline stretched, and investors began to grow impatient. But the worst wasn't the project problems. It was what happened when someone photographed Adana and Chief Emeka leaving the hotel together in Abuja. The photo was innocent, walking side by side, not even touching. But the implication was clear, traveling together, staying in the same hotel, leaving in the evening. The photo reached a corporate gossip blog that specialized in Nigerian executive scandals. The headline was sensationalist. Obi Holdings CEO and his analyst. Romance or nepotism? The article speculated about their relationship, mentioned the original message, suggested that the entire expansion project was an elaborate excuse to be together. Adana discovered it on the plane back to Lagos. Her phone started exploding with messages, some from old colleagues expressing shock, others from genuinely concerned friends, and some simply with links to the article and comments ranging from sympathetic to cruel. She read the comments on the blog, something she immediately regretted doing. How did she get so high up being so mediocre? Now we know. Typical, women always use what they have to get ahead. He should know better. This will damage the company's reputation. She felt nauseous. The plane seemed to move too fast, the air conditioning too cold. She closed her eyes, trying to breathe. But all she could see were those words, mediocre, using what she has, typical. Chief Emeka, sitting beside her in first class, noticed her pallor. What's wrong? When she showed him her phone, his jaw tightened. He read in silence, his expression growing darker with each paragraph. This is, he began, then stopped, searching for appropriate words. This is garbage. It's my life, Adana replied in a hollow voice. It's how people will see me from now on. No, he contradicted firmly. It's how people who don't know you, who have never seen your work, choose to judge you. And their opinion means nothing. But it did mean something. On Monday, Adana arrived at the office to find gazes even more intense than before. Conversations that stopped abruptly, some colleagues avoiding eye contact. During a finance department meeting, someone made a seemingly innocent comment about unconventional ways to climb the corporate ladder, which was clearly directed at her. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Chief Emeka was summoned to explain the nature of his relationship with Adana and whether it constituted a conflict of interest. She waited outside the boardroom for 3 hours, each minute feeling like a condemnation. When he finally emerged, Chief Emeka looked tired in a way she had never seen. They want you to withdraw from the project, he said bluntly, or for me to bring someone else to supervise it while you return to your original department. Adana felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. And what did you say? That you will go to the Kaduna project next week as planned, and that any decision about personnel changes will wait until we have concrete results. He ran a hand through his hair. I gave them 4 months, Adana. 4 months to prove that this project is successful on merit, not because of whatever they imagine. It was a victory, but it felt like a defeat. 4 months to prove something that should already be obvious. 4 months under a microscope, where every mistake would be evidence of incompetence, every success attributed to favoritism. That night, Adana completely broke down. She arrived at her small apartment in Yaba. She dropped her bag on the floor and simply collapsed onto the sofa. The tears came in waves, all the emotions contained for weeks finally pouring out. It wasn't just the article or the stares. It was the accumulated weight of months fighting against perceptions, defending her competence, sacrificing her peace for a project, and a relationship that now seemed impossible. Her phone rang. It was Chief Emeka. "Are you okay?" "No," she replied honestly. "I'm not okay. I don't know if I can do this, Chief Emeka. I don't know if I'm strong enough." There was a pause. "Can I come over?" 30 minutes later, he was at her door. It was the first time he had visited her in her personal space. She knew there was probably someone waiting to take another picture, to write another article. But at that moment, she didn't care. Chief Emeka walked in and simply embraced her. He said nothing about strength or resilience. He just held her as she cried, his shirt absorbing tears that represented frustration, fear, exhaustion. When she finally calmed down, he spoke. "You don't have to be strong enough. You don't have to do this alone." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "And if you decide it's not worth it, if you decide your peace is more important than this project or me, I will understand. Because you're right, the price has been too high." Adana looked at him, seeing her own fatigue reflected in his eyes. He was also paying a price. The board of directors questioned his judgment. Investors expressed concerns. The corporate press was painting him as a CEO who let personal emotions compromise professional decisions. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "That day you called me into your office?" "Only one thing," Chief Emeka replied. "I regret not having been more careful in protecting you from all this. I should have foreseen how people would react. I should have set clearer boundaries from the start." He touched her face gently. "But regret knowing you, working with you, discovering that I can still feel something beyond corporate ambition? Never." That night, they talked for hours about options, consequences, possible paths. Chief Emeka offered to formalize their relationship publicly, to face the controversy directly. Adana considered taking a break from the project, letting things calm down. They considered every scenario, every implication. In the end, they made no definitive decisions, but they reached one conclusion. Whatever path they chose, they would face it together. And that, at least, was something solid amidst all the uncertainty. When Chief Emeka left near midnight, Adana stood looking out the window at Lagos asleep. She had started this journey as an invisible analyst who had accidentally revealed a secret admiration. Now, she was a woman at the center of a corporate scandal, fighting for her reputation and her future. But she was also a woman who was no longer afraid to be seen, and that, she discovered, was worth something. September arrived with the late dry season rains, washing over Lagos with a melancholy that seemed to reflect Adana's state of mind. The Abuja project remained stalled in structural renovations. Kaduna, which should have started in August, was delayed due to problems with municipal permits. And Enugu, a fourth city that had been added to the original plan, seemed more and more like a fantasy than a possibility. The 4 months Chief Emeka had negotiated with the board were rapidly running out, and they had no tangible results to show. Only delays, cost overruns, and a constant stream of negative publicity. Adana began to suffer from insomnia. She stayed awake night after night, reviewing numbers, searching for solutions that seemed not to exist. She lost weight visibly. The dark circles under her eyes deepened, despite increasingly heavy makeup. Amaka, who had become a close friend again, expressed concern. "You're destroying yourself for this." "It's my responsibility," Adana replied mechanically. "If I fail, I confirm everything they say about me, and if you succeed, they'll say it was luck, or Chief Emeka's help," Amaka pointed out with brutal gentleness. "You can't win, Adana. Not on the terms people have set." But Adana didn't know how to stop trying. Every morning she arrived at 6. Every night she left after 10. She worked weekends, refused social invitations. Her entire life narrowed down to spreadsheets, calls with contractors, meetings with increasingly impatient investors. Chief Emeka tried to make her rest, but he was equally consumed. The board's pressure was immense. 2 members had openly suggested he resign. The company's shares had fallen 8% since the controversy began. Corporate clients expressed concerns about leadership stability. The definitive break came in mid-September, during a crucial presentation to key investors. Adana had worked 3 weeks preparing it, creating projections that showed how delays were temporary, how the return on investment justified the required patience. It was her chance to demonstrate that the project was viable, regardless of any personal drama. But 10 minutes before the presentation, one of the most important investors, Chief Dr. Obinna Eze, a 70-year-old veteran known for his traditional views, said what everyone was thinking. Why should we trust the projections of someone whose professional judgment is already questioned? He didn't even look at Adana as he spoke. We need assurances that this project is being managed with objectivity, not with, he made a vague gesture, personal interests. Chief Emeka intervened immediately. Chief Dr. Obinna, with all due respect, you are questioning the competence of the most brilliant professional in this company based on gossip. It's not gossip if there are photographs, Chief Emeka. Chief Dr. Obinna finally looked at Adana, and in his eyes there was a disdain that cut deeper than any explicit insult. I understand you are a man. Men make judgment errors. But mixing business with personal affairs never ends well. Adana felt something break inside her. Not anger, not indignation, just a deep and absolute fatigue. She slowly stood up, gathering her folders. "Excuse me," she said in a neutral, professional voice. "I need some air." She left the conference room with her head held high, walking with measured steps until she reached the restroom. Only then did she allow her hands to tremble. She looked at herself in the mirror. A 42-year-old woman who looked 50, consumed by stress and constant judgment. For what? To prove what exactly? That she was good at her job? She already knew that. That she deserved respect? The people who mattered already respected her. The ones who didn't, never would, no matter what she did. The presentation continued without her. Chief Emeka gave it, using her materials. Later, they said it was well received, that investors agreed to give 3 additional months, but Adana barely registered the information. She sat in her empty office looking at the lights of Lagos coming on one by one as night fell. Chief Emeka found her there hours later. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Sorry, I needed to be alone." He sat beside her in silence for a moment. Chief Dr. Obinna is old-fashioned. His opinions are shared by many, Adana interrupted softly. Not just him, the board too, some investors, half the office. She looked at him. "Have you ever wondered if they're right? Right about what? About us? About whether my presence in this project is a judgment error? About whether your decisions are compromised?" Adana felt tears, but she held them back. She was tired of crying. "Because I wonder, Chief Emeka, I wonder if it would be better for everyone if I just disappeared." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's practical, rational. If I withdraw, the pressure on you decreases. The project can continue without controversy. You maintain your reputation." She paused, "and I regain my peace." Chief Emeka stood up, walked to the window. "Is that what you want? Peace? I don't know. I used to think I wanted success, recognition. Then I thought, I wanted this." She pointed to the space between them. "But now I just don't want to feel like this." "And how do you feel?" "Like I'm drowning and everyone is watching, judging my swimming technique instead of offering me a life raft." Chief Emeka turned, and in his eyes there was a deep sadness. "If you stay, it won't get easier. The next 3 months will be equally difficult, perhaps worse. There will be more pressure, more scrutiny, more criticism." He approached. "But there will also be this. Every morning working on something you believe in, every problem solved that demonstrates your brilliance. And in the end, if we succeed, the satisfaction of knowing you did it despite everything. And if we fail, then we fail together and start something new together." Adana closed her eyes. She was so tired, so completely exhausted from fighting. But there was something in his words that resonated. Not the promise of success, but the promise of not being alone, no matter the outcome. 3 months, she said finally. "Give me 3 months to decide if it's worth it." Chief Emeka nodded. 3 months. That night, as Adana drove home in the rain, she realized she had crossed another invisible line. She was no longer fighting to prove something to the world. She was fighting to discover what she truly wanted from her life. And that was a much harder question to answer. October brought unusual storms to Lagos. The kind of intense rain that floods streets and paralyzes traffic. Adana saw them as appropriate metaphors for her internal state. Chaos, turbulence, the feeling that carefully constructed structures were crumbling. But curiously, amidst all that darkness, something began to change. Perhaps it was hitting rock bottom that paradoxically gave her a solid foundation. Or perhaps it was the decision to give it only 3 months, which took away the pressure of having to endure everything indefinitely. Whatever the reason, Adana found a new perspective. It started with a conversation with her father. Papa Chike was a simple man who had worked all his life as a carpenter in a small town near Ibadan. When Adana called him, crying after another particularly difficult day, he listened in silence. Then he said, "Daughter, remember when you were 8 years old and tried to build that birdhouse?" Adana chuckled through her tears. "It fell down 3 times. 4. The 4th time you weren't there. But remember what you did? I kept trying, even with everyone making fun." "Exactly. And in the end, I made the prettiest birdhouse in the neighborhood, not because you were the most talented, but because you were the only one stubborn enough not to give up." A pause. "This situation is your adult birdhouse, Adana. Bigger, more complicated, with bigger consequences. But the question remains the same. Will you let the opinions of others stop you from building something beautiful?" They were simple words from a simple man, but they touched something deep in Adana. She had spent her entire adult life being perfect, invisible, unquestionable. And the moment she showed humanity, vulnerability, the world reacted with judgment. But why should she care? When had she surrendered her power of self-definition to people who didn't even know her? She began to make small but significant changes. First, she stopped reading online comments, blocked the gossip blog, stopped searching her name, ignored links well-meaning friends sent. If people wanted to talk about her, let them talk. But she didn't need to consume every venomous word. Second, she started taking care of herself again, returned to her yoga class she had abandoned months ago. She started cooking proper meals instead of surviving on coffee and sandwiches. She slept 8 hours whenever possible. Her body began to recover, and with it, her mind. Third, and perhaps most importantly, she began to build real connections at the office. Not with everyone, not with those determined to judge her, but with the people who saw beyond the drama. Amaka, of course, but also Kemi from the legal department, who confessed to having been in a similar situation years ago. And a young designer named Kemi who admired her resilience. "You don't let them define you," Kemi told her during a lunch. "That's courageous." "I don't feel courageous," Adana admitted. "Most days I'm barely surviving." "Exactly. That's real courage. It's not about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and going on anyway." The words resonated. Adana began to see her situation differently, not as a victim of circumstances, but as someone actively choosing her path despite obstacles. It was a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. The project also began to move again. Structural problems in Abuja finally resolved. Permits in Kaduna were approved, and miraculously, a new investor from Port Harcourt, Alhaji Bello Abubakar, expressed interest not only in financing a branch there, but in expanding the concept to other cities in the South and Southeast regions. Adana traveled to Port Harcourt in November to meet him. Alhaji Bello was different from traditional investors. Younger, more open, interested in sustainability and community impact, beyond profits. During their meeting, he casually mentioned, "I read about the controversy surrounding the project." Adana tensed, preparing for judgment. But he continued, "I found it absurd, as if people were only capable of one dimension, as if you couldn't be professionally brilliant and have human feelings simultaneously." He looked at her directly. Building something significant always comes with critics. If they're not criticizing you, you're probably not doing anything valuable. It was the first time anyone in the business world had validated her experience unconditionally. Adana felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you," she said simply. "Don't thank me, just prove me right by investing in this." Alhaji Bello smiled. "Now, let's talk numbers." That night, Adana walked through the streets of Port Harcourt, with the aroma of fried akara in the air and the sound of Afrobeats coming from the bars. It was a city completely different from Lagos, warmer, more open, with a rhythm that invited savoring moments, instead of rushing to the next goal. Chief Emeka called her. "How was it?" "Good, very good, actually. We have a new investor." She told him about Alhaji Bello, about his refreshing perspective. "And you?" Chief Emeka asked. "How are you?" Adana thought about the question. A month ago she would have responded with a list of stress symptoms, but now, standing on a Port Harcourt street under a starry sky, "I'm very well, really well. Still need the full 3 months to decide?" She smiled, though he couldn't see her. "Yes, but now, it's for a different reason. I'm not waiting for things to magically get better. I'm learning who I am in the midst of the chaos." "And who are you?" "Still not sure, but I'm starting to think that's okay. I don't need to have all the answers. I just need to keep asking the questions." There was silence on the other end. Then, "I miss you. I miss you too. When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow afternoon." But Chief Emeka paused, searching for the right words. "When you get back, we need to talk, really talk. About what this is between us, about expectations, about how we navigate the future, no matter what comes." "Okay," she accepted. "Let's talk." That night, in her hotel room, Adana did something she hadn't done in months. She wrote. Not financial reports or market analyses, but personal thoughts, reflections on her journey. She wrote about the accidental message that changed everything, about discovering that perfection was a prison, about learning that vulnerability was strength. And she wrote about Chief Emeka, about how his initial provocations had been his way of dealing with the attraction that didn't fit into his structured world, about how he had risked his own reputation to protect her, about how, amidst all the chaos, he had been the only constant. When she finished, it was 3:00 a.m. She read what she had written, pages of raw honesty that no one else would see. And for the first time in months, she slept soundly, without nightmares, without insomnia, just rest. Because she had finally understood something crucial. She wasn't waiting for the storm to pass. She was learning to dance in the rain. Adana returned to Lagos with a clarity that surprised even her. The conversation with Chief Emeka happened in his office, after everyone had left. It was a Friday night in November, with the city sparkling below them like a tapestry of golden lights. "I've been thinking," Adana began, sitting before him, "about what I truly want. Not what I should want, or what would be easier, or what would silence the critics, but what I really, deeply want." Chief Emeka leaned back in his chair, his fingers intertwined. "And I want to finish this project. Not to prove something to you or the board, or Chief Dr. Obinna, but because I believe in it, because I know I can do it and do it well." She paused. "And I want to explore this with you. This strange, complicated, impossibly ill-timed thing between us." That sounds like a very clear list of priorities. It is. But I also have conditions. Chief Emeka raised an eyebrow, interested. "Conditions. First, no special protection. If I make a mistake, I want you to point it out just like anyone else. You can't treat me with kid gloves because we are, whatever we are." "Agreed." "Second, complete transparency. With human resources, with the board, with whoever needs to know. No more secrets, no more ambiguity. If we're going to do this, we do it openly and deal with the consequences together." Also agreed. And third, Adana took a deep breath. "I need you to understand that I might change my mind. About the project, about us, about everything. These 3 months are as much for me to understand myself as they are for making the project work. And if in the end I decide I want something different, you need to respect that." Chief Emeka stood up, walked around the desk, knelt before her so their eyes were level. "Adana, I have always respected your right to choose. Even when I hoped you would choose to stay, I would have accepted if you had decided to go." He took her hands. "But I need you to understand something too. This isn't a game for me. You are not a distraction or a midlife judgment error." He searched for words. "You are the first person in 30 years who makes me want something beyond this company." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Adana felt tears, but this time of relief, not pain. "So, we agree. We agree." The kiss they shared was unlike anything Adana had imagined during all those months of tension. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It was soft, deliberate, full of promise instead of urgency. It was the kiss of two people who had finally decided to stop fighting the inevitable. The following weeks were a revelation. With their relationship now formally recognized, with Adana transferred to an independent subsidiary of the project, something extraordinary happened. Most of the drama simply disappeared. Some still criticized, of course, but without the scandal of secrecy, without the tension of ambiguity, the criticisms lost their power. More importantly, Adana and Chief Emeka were able to work without the constant burden of hiding feelings. His teasing became open, affectionate. Her defenses relaxed. They discovered they were not only a good professional team but a functional couple who balanced each other. The project accelerated. Abuja finally opened in December, a smaller ceremony than Calabar, but equally significant. Kaduna was scheduled for January, and Port Harcourt, with Alhaji Bello's investment, for March. The fourth city, Enugu, seemed possible now, but the real change was internal. Adana realized she had spent her entire life trying to be invisible, a perfectionist to the point of self-annihilation. The accidental message, far from being the disaster she feared, had been her liberation. It had forced her to be seen, judged, criticized. And by surviving that, she had discovered something more valuable than perfection: authenticity. One afternoon, as they reviewed blueprints for Kaduna, Chief Emeka commented, "Do you know what changed between us? What? You're no longer trying to prove anything to me, or to yourself." He looked at her. "You simply are. And that is infinitely more attractive than all the perfection you tried to project before." Adana chuckled. "Are you saying you like me more now that I'm a mess? I'm saying I like you more now that you're real. The mess is just a side effect of being human." It was during this period that Adana began to repair relationships she had damaged or neglected. She called her parents more frequently. She accepted dinner invitations with Amaka and other friends. She even had a difficult but necessary conversation with Mr. Tunde, her former boss, explaining her decisions and apologizing for how she had handled some things. "You don't need to apologize," Mr. Tunde told her. "You were in an impossible situation, and honestly, Adana, I think all this has made you better at your job. More strategic, more aware of human dynamics, not just numbers." He was right. Adana noticed that she approached problems differently now. She no longer just analyzed data. She considered people, policies, perceptions. Her work became more multidimensional, more nuanced, and her relationship with Chief Emeka continued to evolve. They discovered they enjoyed cooking together on Sundays, experimenting with traditional Nigerian recipes, that both were terrible at board games but played anyway, competing fiercely, that they could spend hours in comfortable silence, each working on their own things but sharing space. One evening, after a particularly successful day, where they secured the final funding for Kaduna, they dined at a small restaurant in a lively district in Lagos. The bohemian streets were lit with festive lights, creating a magical atmosphere. "Remember when you said you needed 3 months to decide?" Chief Emeka asked as they shared a creamy caramel custard. "Yes, almost that time has passed. Have you decided?" Adana thought carefully before answering. "I decided that the question was poorly formulated. It's not about whether the sacrifice is worth it. It's about whether I'm living authentically. And for the first time in my life, I am." "Does that mean you're staying?" "It means I'm not going anywhere. Not because I have to, but because I want to." She looked at him across the candles on the table. "Does that scare you?" Chief Emeka smiled. "It terrifies me, but in the best possible way." They left the restaurant hand in hand, walking aimlessly through the tree-lined streets. Lagos at Christmas had a special magic. The lights, the markets, the aroma of festive bread, the promise of new beginnings. "There's something I never told you," Adana began as they walked. "About that message." "What?" "It wasn't completely an accident. I mean, yes, I wanted to send it to my friend, but the thought was real, frequent. I had been observing you for 2 years." She stopped, turning to him. "I think part of me wanted to be caught, wanted something, anything, to break the cage I had built around my life. And did it break?" "It demolished the cage completely, in the most chaotic, public, humiliating way possible." She laughed. "But it also freed me. So, thank you for accepting my clumsy admiration and turning it into this." Chief Emeka kissed her there, in the middle of a tree-lined street, under Christmas lights, with pedestrians passing by and street musicians playing festive tunes. And Adana thought that if she could go back and undo that accidental message, she wouldn't, because every painful moment, every criticism, every sleepless night had been the price of discovering herself, and that was a price worth paying 1,000 times over. January brought with it the intense heat of Kaduna's scorching summer, when Adana and Chief Emeka traveled to Kaduna for the inauguration of the second branch. The city was completely different from the cities they had worked in before, with its unique northern architecture, resilient, with a beauty that reflected its history of transformation. The sunset over the Kaduna River painted the sky in orange and pink hues that seemed to validate all their efforts. The inauguration ceremony was larger than the previous ones. National press, Kaduna state officials, investors from all over Nigeria. Alhaji Bello flew from Port Harcourt specifically to attend, as did the mayor of Abuja. It was a tangible validation that the project had overcome the initial controversy and become something significant on its own merits. During his speech, Chief Emeka did something unexpected. Instead of speaking only about corporate vision, he publicly acknowledged the challenges they had faced. "This project almost didn't happen," he admitted, before hundreds of people. "Not due to a lack of financial viability or market demand, but because we allowed irrelevant concerns about the personal lives of talented professionals to almost override objective evidence of their competence." Adana, standing beside the stage, felt her heart race. He continued, "I learned something valuable this year. I learned that the best business decisions come when we treat people as whole human beings, not as one-dimensional resources. I learned that vulnerability is not weakness, but the foundation of real innovation. He looked directly at Adana, and I learned that sometimes the smallest mistakes lead us to the greatest discoveries. There was a silence. Then applause that started slowly but grew to fill the space. Not everyone was applauding for the same reasons, Adana knew. Some celebrated the project, others the message about humanity and business, and some simply appreciated the raw honesty in a world of rehearsed corporate speeches. Later, during the reception, Chief Dr. Obinna Eze, the investor who had so harshly questioned Adana months ago, approached her. He seemed uncomfortable. "Miss Adana, I must offer an apology." Adana looked at him, surprised. "Chief Dr. Obinna? I allowed prejudices from another era to cloud my professional judgment," he said with difficulty, as if each word cost him. "I questioned your competence based on irrelevant circumstances. I saw the numbers. I saw how you managed every crisis, every delay, every obstacle. You are not only competent, you are exceptional." It was the validation Adana had wanted for months, but she found that she no longer needed it in the same way. "Thank you, Chief Dr. Obinna, but more than apologies. I would like you to consider updating your evaluation criteria for future professionals." He blinked, not expecting the response. Then, slowly, he nodded. "That's fair and necessary." That night, Adana and Chief Emeka walked along the banks of the Lagos Lagoon, with the sunset painting the sky in impossible colors. February was near, which meant the 3 months Adana had asked for had almost concluded. "Still thinking about the Enugu offer?" Chief Emeka asked. "Sometimes," Adana admitted. "Not because I want to go, but because I wonder what that alternative version of my life would have been like." She looked at him. "But I think it would have been safer, but less meaningful. This version, the chaotic one, is more interesting." "Interesting is your polite way of saying stressful?" Adana laughed. "Interesting is my way of saying I'm finally living instead of just surviving." They received the news about Port Harcourt in February. The branch there was not only ahead of schedule. Alhaji Bello had convinced 3 additional investors to expand to other south-south and southeast Nigerian cities, Calabar, Owerri, and Uyo. What had started as a 3-city project was now potentially 7. "You're going to need a bigger team," Chief Emeka told Adana during a planning meeting. "You can't do everything yourself anymore." Adana knew he was right, but the idea of delegating, of trusting others with something so personal, was difficult. What if they hire the wrong people? What if they don't understand the vision? "Then you will train them, you will guide them." Chief Emeka smiled. "Just like I guided you." Well, after all the initial mind games, creating her team became the project within the project. Adana hired carefully. Kemi, the young designer who had admired her, became her lead assistant. Mr. Kemi from legal took on all regulatory aspects, and to her surprise, Amaka requested a transfer to the project, bringing her human resources expertise. "Why?" Adana asked when Amaka made the formal request. "Because you taught me something," Amaka replied. "You taught me that it's possible to be professional and human simultaneously, that we don't have to choose between success and authenticity." She paused. "And because I believe in this, not just the business project, but what it represents, the possibility of doing things differently." March arrived with the first rains of the season, filling Lagos with flowers and the sense of renewal that comes with fresh mornings. The Port Harcourt inauguration was scheduled for the end of the month and would be the biggest yet. But before that, Adana had something to do. She organized a meeting with all the professional women at OB Holdings. It wasn't mandatory, but over 50 attended. Adana spoke honestly about her experience. The accidental message, the rumors, the doubts, the judgments, and about how she had navigated everything while maintaining her professional integrity. "I'm not saying my path is the right one for everyone," she concluded, "but I will say this. Your humanity is not a weakness. Your emotions do not invalidate your competence. And if anyone suggests otherwise, the problem is theirs, not yours." A young analyst timidly raised her hand. "But how do you deal with fear? The fear that if you show vulnerability, they will take advantage." Adana thought carefully before answering. "You don't deal with fear by making it disappear. You deal with fear by recognizing it, feeling it, and acting anyway. I was afraid every day of the last year. I still am. But I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It's deciding that something matters more than fear." The meeting ended with a standing ovation. Several women approached afterwards to share their own stories, their own challenges. Adana realized that unwittingly, she had become something she never aspired to be, a symbol, not of perfection, but of resilience, not of having all the answers, but of continuing to ask the questions. The inauguration in Port Harcourt was on a golden late March afternoon, with the aroma of rich pepper soup and grilled fish filling the air and Afrobeats playing in the background. It was perfect in the way only Niger Delta things can be, chaotic but beautiful, formal but warm, professional but passionate. During Adana's speech, she looked at the audience, investors who initially doubted but now applauded, colleagues who had judged her but now respected her, and Chief Emeka, standing nearby, looking at her with evident pride, and she realized she had come full circle. This project started with a mistake, she said, allowing herself to smile at the recognition from some in the audience, the kind of mistake most people would try to erase, forget, pretend never happened. But that mistake taught me that our most human moments are often our most important moments, because they remind us that we are people before we are professionals, and that the best things we build come not from perfection, but from authenticity. She paused, letting her words resonate. So, thank you to everyone who trusted in this project, even when it was controversial. Thank you to those who challenged me to be better, and thank you especially to those who reminded me that being wrong once doesn't mean being wrong always. The applause was deafening, and as Adana stepped off the stage, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had finally accepted that perfection wasn't the goal. Wholeness was. April brought with it not only milder temperatures, but also a crucial board of directors meeting. The extended 3 months Chief Emeka had negotiated had expired. Now it was time for a final evaluation of the project and, implicitly, the decision to keep Adana in her leadership position. Adana prepared the most complete presentation of her career. Not just numbers, though those were impressive. 3 operational branches, 4 in development, return on investment exceeding initial projections by 32%. But she also included something more: testimonials from local employees, community impact, innovations in processes that other divisions of the company were adopting. The night before the meeting, Adana couldn't sleep. Not out of nerves, as would have been the case months ago, but out of clarity. She realized that no matter what the board decided, she would be okay. She had proven her competence beyond any reasonable doubt. She had built a strong team, and most importantly, she had found herself in the process. Chief Emeka found her in the office at 5:00 a.m., reviewing the slides one last time. "You can't improve something that's already perfect," he said from the doorway. "Perfection is subjective," Adana replied without looking up. "It is, but your work isn't. It's objectively brilliant." He sat beside her. "Nervous?" "Curious," she corrected. "Nervous implies I fear the outcome. Curious means I want to see what happens, but I trust in my ability to handle anything." "When did you get so philosophical?" Adana finally looked at him. "Around the time a teasing CEO decided to turn my humiliating mistake into a transformative opportunity." The board meeting was at 10:00 a.m. Adana presented for 90 minutes, answered questions for another 60. Some board members asked difficult questions about long-term sustainability, about whether rapid expansion risked quality. But, notably, no one asked about her relationship with Chief Emeka. That topic seemed, finally, to have lost relevance in the face of tangible results. When the vote occurred, it was unanimous. Continue the project with Adana as director, expand to the additional proposed cities, and consider replicating the model in Ghana and Kenya. It was more than she had expected. Chief Dr. Obina Eze, who had been her harshest critic, was the first to congratulate her afterwards. There were doubts about whether a person could maintain professional objectivity in complex personal circumstances, he said. "You not only proved it was possible, you demonstrated that, sometimes, those very circumstances strengthen performance by making the person more complete, more aware." It was a victory, but Adana knew that the true victory had happened much earlier, on the day she decided to stop apologizing for existing. That night, Chief Emeka organized a private dinner at one of Lagos's most exclusive restaurants, with a view of Eko Atlantic City. It was just for the two of them. "We need to talk about the future," he said once the wine was served. He sounded serious. "We do, but not in the way you fear." Chief Emeka took her hand across the table. "The project will expand internationally. That means more travel, more responsibility. You'll probably need to relocate between cities. It's an incredible opportunity for your career." I hear a "but" in your voice. "But it also means less time together." Or he paused. "It means we need to define this formally, not just as colleagues with a relationship, but as a committed couple navigating international careers together." Adana felt her pulse quicken. What exactly are you proposing? Chief Emeka took a small box from his pocket. I'm proposing that you stop calling me your boss and start calling me your future husband. The restaurant seemed to fade away. Adana looked at the box, then at Chief Emeka, then back at the box. This is a giant leap from, let's see how it goes. It's been a year since that message, Adana, Chief Emeka pointed out. A year working together, challenging each other, surviving controversies, building something significant. If that's not enough time to know, then it never will be. And the company? The board? I've already spoken with them. There are precedents of married couples working in the same company. It just requires some structural adjustments. He smiled. Besides, after everything we've been through, do you really care what they think? Adana laughed. A year ago, I would have been terrified. Now she opened the box, revealing an elegant aquamarine ring. Now I'm just excited. Is that a yes? It's a, you're still teasing me, but this time it doesn't bother me. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Yes, Chief Emeka, of course it is. The kiss they shared was interrupted by discreet applause from other patrons who had noticed the proposal. Adana laughed, wiping her tears. I never do anything privately anymore, do I? Would you prefer it to be different? She thought about the past year, the public message, the rumors, the controversies. Every private moment turned into a spectacle, and she realized she wouldn't change anything. No, she replied honestly. This is our story, public, complicated, unconventional, and it's perfectly imperfect. The following weeks were a whirlwind. They announced their engagement formally, which generated another cycle of articles, but this time, the narrative was different. No longer CEO and subordinate in scandalous romance, it was business couple demonstrates professionalism and romance can coexist. A small change in words, a huge change in perception. The wedding was scheduled for June, early enough to be before the Enugu inauguration in July, but far enough to plan properly. Adana insisted on something small and intimate, just close family and true friends. After a year in the public eye, she wanted this moment for them. But first, there was something she needed to do. In May, Adana returned to her hometown near Ibadan. Her father was in his carpentry workshop, his hands stained with wood varnish, surrounded by the familiar aroma of sawdust and glue. Papa, she began, her voice emotional. I want to thank you. Papa Chike looked up, surprised. For what, daughter? For teaching me about persistence, for that story of the birdhouse. She wiped a tear. I clung to that story throughout this year. Every time I wanted to give up, I thought of you telling me to keep trying. Her father carefully put down his tool, wiped his hands on his apron. Adana, you didn't need me to teach you anything. That persistence was always in you. You just needed a reason important enough to discover it. And did I find it? Did I find my reason? Yes, but it wasn't the project or the man, though both are good. He touched her heart. Your reason was yourself. You decided you were worth the fight. And that, my dear daughter, is the bravest thing anyone can do. Adana hugged her father there, in the workshop where she had spent so many afternoons of her childhood, learning that creating beautiful things requires patience, precision, and the willingness to start over when something goes wrong. Those silent lessons from childhood had been her foundation during the most difficult year of her adult life. And as she drove back to Lagos, with the rolling hills of the hinterlands green against the blue sky, Adana realized that the story that began with a humiliating message had evolved into something much larger. It wasn't just about finding love or proving professional competence. It was about discovering authenticity in a world that constantly pressures conformity. It was about having the courage to be imperfectly human, and that, she decided, was the best possible ending, or rather, the best beginning. Adana and Chief Emeka's wedding was on a restored rural estate on the outskirts of Lagos, surrounded by sprawling farmlands and lush greenery. It was a Saturday in June, with the kind of perfect weather that seemed specially ordered. Blue sky, gentle breeze, ideal temperature. Only 40 guests, exactly as Adana wanted. Amaka was her chief bridesmaid, standing beside her as she prepared in the bridal suite. Nervous? She asked, adjusting the lace veil that had belonged to Adana's grandmother. Strangely not, Adana replied, looking at herself in the mirror. The dress was simple, elegant, completely different from the corporate suits she had worn for years. Should I be nervous? Probably. You're about to marry your boss in a ceremony that will be photographed and commented on. A year ago you would have been terrified. Adana smiled. A year ago I was terrified of everything. Now I'm just happy. The ceremony was short but emotional. Adana's father walked her down the aisle, his carpenter's calloused hands trembling slightly. Chief Emeka waited at the end, looking more relaxed than Adana had seen him in a year. When their eyes met, he smiled in that way he reserved just for her. No provocation, no games, just genuine affection. The vows were traditional, but the words they shared afterwards were not. 14 months ago, Chief Emeka began, holding her hands. I received a message that changed my life. Not because it was particularly eloquent or sophisticated, but because it was honest, in a way I had forgotten existed. Adana felt tears threatening her carefully applied makeup, and I sent that message thinking it would be the worst mistake of my life, she continued. It ended up being the best, because it forced me to stop hiding. It forced me to be seen, and by being seen, I found all this. She gestured to the space between them, then to the guests, then to herself. I found real life. There wasn't a dry eye among the guests. Even Chief Dr. Obinna, seated in the third row, discreetly wiped his glasses. The reception was exactly as Adana imagined. Authentic Nigerian food, live music that mixed highlife with Afrobeats, unrestrained laughter. Alhaji Bello gave a toast that began as a financial evaluation of the ROI of personal relationships and ended as a heartfelt meditation on the value of authenticity. But the moment Adana would remember forever came later, when she and Chief Emeka danced alone under the stars while the guests chatted inside. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, moving slowly to the distant music. "About how we started," Adana replied. "An accidental message I thought would be my end, and it ended up being my beginning." "Do you regret anything?" Adana thought carefully. "I regret the pain I caused some people. I regret the moments where I allowed fear to control me. But regret the message itself? The journey it unleashed?" She shook her head. "No, not for a second. And if you could go back and write the right message from the start, what would you say?" It was a fascinating question. Adana thought of all the options, something professional, something intelligent, something that wouldn't cause controversy. But then she realized that the right message was exactly the one she had sent. Because the right message wasn't the most appropriate. It was the most honest. "I would say exactly the same thing," she replied finally. "What a handsome man." Because it was true, and because all truth, even inconvenient, has its own value. Chief Emeka kissed her under the starry Lagos sky, surrounded by the aroma of farmlands and the distant sound of laughter. And Adana thought about the year that had passed, the challenges, the tears, the triumphs, the growth. She thought of the woman she was before the message, invisible, fearful, perfectly miserable, and the woman she was now, visible, courageous, imperfectly happy. 6 months later, sitting in her new office overlooking all of Lagos, Adana opened her laptop and found an email from a young analyst in the company. The subject read, "Thank you for your courage." The message told a familiar story. A woman struggling with impossible expectations, hiding her true self, fearing that her humanity would invalidate her professional competence. Adana replied, "Your humanity is not your weakness, it's your superpower. Use it wisely." And as she pressed send, she smiled, remembering that just 2 years ago she would have needed exactly that message. Now she could give others what she had discovered for herself. Permission to be imperfectly wonderful. Adana's phone rang. It was Chief Emeka. "Lunch? Where?" "That small cafe where we used to work late." "I'm nostalgic for when everything was new and scary," Adana laughed. "Everything is still new and scary. It's just that now we know we can handle it." "Exactly my point." "So, lunch? Give me 20 minutes. As she left her office, passing through the finance department where her journey had begun, Adana thought about the power of accidental beginnings, about how an unintentionally sent message had unlocked a life she never knew she wanted, about how the most embarrassing moments sometimes contain the seeds of the most extraordinary transformations. Her phone vibrated with a message from her father, a photo of a new birdhouse he had built. "For your new garden," the note read, "because we all need a reminder that even projects that fall 3 times can end up beautiful." Adana saved the photo, knowing she would frame it. It was a perfect symbol of her journey. Persistence through collapses, beauty emerging from imperfect attempts, success defined not by perfection but by the willingness to keep trying. As she walked out of the building into the bright Lagos sun, Adana Herrera, International Expansion Director for Obi Holdings and wife of its CEO, realized she had arrived exactly where she needed to be, not because everything was perfect, but because she had finally learned that imperfection was where real life happened. And that, she decided, was the most important message of all.